It's taken me well over 8 years to get around to my first proper playthrough of Grand Theft Auto 5, and that's kind of weird because many of you may know me for doing content on Red Dead Redemption's mysteries, lore and secrets, and I thought why not do some form of series where we do the occasional similar piece of content for the mysteries and secrets of this game, because in my time playing this game I've learnt that there are enough. There's a few. I doubt it's going to be anywhere near as big as my Red Dead playlist, don't get me wrong, and I don't necessarily intend it to be, but this series will not necessarily be exclusive to Grand Theft Auto 5. If there are any mysteries in the older games that you'd like me to touch down on, be sure to let me know and I'll do my best to get around to them. But the primary focus is to have something that just fills the gaps between the other stuff that I'm doing, because I'm also well aware that a lot of people are fundamentally sick of this game. But I thought, sod it, I'll test it out regardless, just to see how it goes in the mix of all the other content that I've got on the go, because the worst that can happen is that people won't like it and I'm still delivering all the other content that I'm making. Anyway, today we're starting in a rather dark place, as what better way is there to start a series like this than with a serial killer? So, grab yourself a brew, relax, get yourself nice and comfy, because we're going on a bit of an adventure across Blaine County to tell the story of the Infinity Killer. To begin our investigation, we need to head to the delightful town of Sandy Shores. This dry, unsanitized desert town is best described as a bit of a dump, with most of its past population having moved on to greener pastures, and many of those who remain are in makeshift living situations such as motorhomes or static caravans, with many unoccupied abandoned buildings, some that are in complete disrepair. To avoid beating around the bush, Sandy Shores is a shithole, so all in all it's hardly the worst place for our creepy story to begin. If we head to the western side of town, we will come across a building that's roof has collapsed. Inside, against one of the posts supporting the destroyed structure, is what appears to be a cutout newspaper article, dated December of 2004. It reads as follows: Suspected killer Merle Abrams dies in prison. Merle Abrams, the suspected Infinity Killer, passed away last night in Bolingbroke Penitentiary while awaiting trial for abduction and torture. Abrams, 57, was suspected to be responsible for the Infinity murders, a series of disappearances that happened 5 years ago. In 1999, for reference, police believed the 8 victims, who were all single young men, killed while jogging, were all murdered by the same person and had circumstantial evidence linking Mr. Abrams to the victims. No bodies were ever found and Abrams never confessed, although he did admit to a weird obsession with the number 8. What we can gather from this is in this area in 1999 a serial killer killed 8 victims. The victims were never found, however the suspect died behind bars in 2004. I'm really going for the intense dramatic voice today, Jesus Christ. Anyway, in Sandy Shores we can actually visit suspected serial killer Merle Abrams' home, or at least the burnt down remains of it. Now this place has some interesting details about it. Firstly, graffitied on the wall inside the burnt remains of their house, it reads "There will be 8", implying that there will be 8 victims. And thanks to that article we found before, we know there were. On the wall in the back room we can read "8 is just infinity, stood up." Dangling from the ceiling, we can find shoes, which might be running shoes, which makes sense. The victims Abrams was suspected of killing were joggers. The number 8 is scrawled all over the house, along with tally markings, though I couldn't necessarily tell you what they were for. On a shelf in the back room, we can find some jars, the contents of which has been obscured by what appears to be mould. Dismembered body parts and organs, perhaps? Serial killers do like to keep mementos, which might explain the shoes on the ceiling, but I'm not going to read too far into what's in these jars. Outside at the back of the house we can read "Go away, Merle Abrams, you're a wrong'un," which was likely left by another resident of Sandy Shores after Abrams' incarceration. Back to the tally markings, the benefit of making a video like this almost 9 years after a game's release is there are already theories circulating about them. It's possible that Merle Abrams brought his victims back here and tortured them for days, and the tally markings represent each day the victim survived the torture. Or maybe the victims left these markings to represent how long they survived their captivity, which makes sense when you remember that article states that Abrams was arrested for abduction and torture. But another theory I'd like to throw out there personally is all of these killings took place in the same year, 1999, which is a little irregular for serial killers. Sometimes they like to be undetected for as long as possible, and other times they go out on sprees and don't stop until they're caught. Though this doesn't entirely apply to Abrams, as he set out to kill 8 people and did. But the theory I want to suggest is, could these tally markings represent the number of days this spree went on for? Moving on, around the house we can find a strange marking. This marking may just be the most significant clue in this entire place, but I shall explain why when it pops up again later. Anyway, that's everything we can find in the home of suspected serial killer Merle Abrams, and it's pretty damning. For our next set of clues, we need to head out to Sonora National Park, specifically southeast of Merle Abrams' home. When we get here, from quite far away, we can see the number 8 marked on the rocks. And when we get closer, we can find a message, a poem that reads, 1 is done, 2 is fun, 3 try to run, 4 called mum, 5's not alive, 6 is nix, 7's in heaven, and 8 won't wait. Further south into the park, we can find yet another rock with a message left behind by the Infinity Killer. They want me, they can have, but they'll never get my people, even though I shall leave them sign enough where they put me. Essentially, this means they are going to catch him. However, he will leave a clue to the whereabouts of his victims in the prison they incarcerate him in. There's the beginnings of another message here which simply reads 8 won't, which leads me to believe that this is where the police apprehended Merle Abrams, which means the next clue lays waiting at Bolingbroke Penitentiary, where Merle Abrams resided until his death. The prison sits southwest of Sonora National Park and is kind of hard to miss. It's a prison. On a wall in the yard near cell block 9B, we can find this hint: where water meets land and fire once spewed forth, there the infinite 8 shall stay until I return. And along with it is that marking I mentioned before, a map with one hint: north. This seemingly resembles the northernmost point of the game map. This leads us to a little beach northeast of the town Paleto Bay. It's here where, dumped in the sea, we can find 8 dead bodies wrapped in tape. Interestingly, these bodies do not look 14 years old, as I'm led to believe that Grand Theft Auto 5 takes place in 2013. It's also worth mentioning the Infinity Killer's victims were all male, whereas some of these bodies appear to be female, though it could just be the wrapping making it hard to tell. As for the age of the bodies, perhaps Merle Abrams found a means to preserve them. After all, they are the Infinite 8. The Infinity Killer's hints pointed here and we found the bodies, but something just doesn't add up. With the right resources under perfect conditions, yes, dead bodies can be preserved quite well. However, this is anything but either of those things. The currents of the ocean would batter these corpses, wear them down, and after a few days surely they'd float up to the surface and either be discovered by onlookers or feasted on by scavengers. Thanks to exposed parts to these bodies, we can tell that they look days old, if even, not years. Maybe Merle Abrams preserved the bodies well and found a means to avoid the bodies resurfacing once submerged. Or maybe the bodies of the Infinity Killer's victims are still lost out there somewhere, and these bodies are the work of a copycat. Or maybe it was a little bit of a development oversight, as this side story has no mission attached, so it's just a bit of fun. Either way, the trail runs cold there, bringing us to the end of today's video. Thank you all for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends and all that wonderful stuff if you want to. That would be super fantastic. And be sure to suggest where I stick my nose next to sniff out these mysteries and secrets and lore bits that make me happy inside. But with any luck, I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point. But until next time, take care and goodbye.